look, it's time for our little Zoom from quarantine True Hoop show called Bring It In. My intros are just a mess. Like I say a different thing, slightly different every time. It's kind of fun. How are you, David?
I'm a little lonely. I'm home alone. We have a nice sized house, and it's just me. Our dog is dead. My kids are in college. My wife left me to take a vacation. She didn't really leave me, but now I'm fine. I'm thrilled that she's having
You
a great
led with the
time.
dead dog.
Yeah, I was just trying to make you feel sorry for me. No, life is good, my man. Life is good.
And I know that in your alone time, you've been doing the relaxing thing of watching Homeland for the first time, which always makes you feel comfy.
I have to literally, normally I try to take 30 minutes a day, have lunch in my office and watch something where I don't have to think. The politics I get away from. And I made the mistake of trying to say, oh, I'll watch 30 minutes of Homeland, see if it's something I'm interested in. And of course I'm a little hooked, but not a great show to eat your lunch with,
No.
So now I'm doing it like 11 o'clock at night.
I don't think I'm giving anything away to tell you that there's a scene in some late season where she snorts caffeine. She purchases caffeine in a powder form and snorts it, and that's about as unrelaxing as TV viewing can get.
Yeah. It's nice to get away from the crazy world, and because of basketball is off a little bit. Although I would tell you, I was already at 6:30 this morning. I was watching James Weissman tape for a future article that's coming.
Talking about this, yeah.
It was fun to watch, by the way. He's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what we want to talk about. James Weissman is a perfect entree into your article published this morning about Anthony Davis. You think that he may have just played the best 2 months of NBA big man basketball in history. We can delve all into that, but James Weissman is a topic that relates to that, and you can explain why.
Yeah, so Weissman is he played one game, and so in that game he mostly just dunked everything and was super fast and really enjoyed to watch. Made some nice passes with the ball, and I've heard. In fact, I'm actually speaking today to one of his coaches from Memphis last year, so I'll get some really good insight as to what they saw in him, because they recruited him and everything, and they saw him probably growing up there. He looks like he could be like Anthony Davis, and that's relevant because nobody thinks he's going to be the first pick in the draft anymore. And we just saw what Anthony Davis did. So, yes, if LeBron James' clone is in the draft, then maybe take him over an AD. I could understand the argument, but absent that, to pass up a guy that maybe could do things like Davis isn't so easy to do. Anyway, that's my working theory, because I haven't seen Weissman play enough yet. Davis, I've seen.
And I would say too, and I want to get into this, but like if Anthony Davis is going to be winning championships and operating all over the court, moving like a guard at his size, then suddenly you have to ask, like, do we have a big man that we can play on the court with this guy, or do we have to guard him with Andre Iguodala like the Heat did part of the time, right? Like, and this is where I think I would look at James Weissman and say, like, oh, he potentially can move around the court like Anthony Davis does, which is a new problem to solve in the NBA.
Yeah. So, and it's on both ends of the court, right? Yeah. It's not just about what they do offensively anymore,
right?
Because if you can get out and guard 3-point shooters the way AD can,
right,
and drivers, well, that just adds another dimension to what your defense can accomplish. So to me, that's a very intriguing thing. Then there might be the other guys in the draft that can do it too. But as I told someone this morning, you're not going to get a clone of AD, but if you can get someone to emulate him and have that kind of potential because of similar size and athleticism, it's a good thing. And he's Weissman's a pretty strong looking dude based on what I saw. And this was literally 11 months ago. So he's going to look much. I mean, I'm sure he's lifting weights all the time now. There's nothing else they could do. So these guys should be all these guys in the draft their body should look much better.
So my job is to answer the phone and listen to smart people like you talk, and then notice when you make special noises, right? And during these playoffs, you made noises that are very unusual for you about, like, oh my God, like, you would just say things about Anthony Davis that tripped some trigger in you, rang some alarm bells, just plays that were developing in ways that you didn't expect, hadn't seen, weren't used to. Which now led you, after some reflection, to conclude that these were maybe the best 2 months of big man basketball in history. Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's unfair. Like, Wilt had better scoring games and, uh, name the player, right? Davis didn't do any one thing better than anyone else. Shaq had some incredibly dominating performances, and Shaq was also a great athlete. Before he was big, muscular Shaq, he was super athletic, thin Shaq, and he was very good then for the Magic. Um, but when I looked at the totality, right, when we just did our GOAT discussion, Jordan wasn't just a scorer. Magic Johnson wasn't just a passer, right? We can go LeBron, of course. So this is what the game is supposed to be about. If you could only dominate in one area, there's ways like never before that teams can scheme around that and make it hard for you. And even sometimes, like in Dwight Howard's case, although he's not the best player or whatever, and not even scheme you out of the lineup, right? The Celtics showed, not Celtics, the Heat had Kelly Olynyk go off one game. And all of a sudden, Dwight Howard seemed not so relevant. And JaVale McGee didn't play at all. He started with them all year, and he was very good. That two-headed monster for the Lakers that three-headed monster for the Lakers, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, and Anthony Davis, was just Anthony Davis by game 6. And mostly Anthony Davis only by game 2 and 3. So you can't scheme AD. You can't scheme him out because he guards three-point shooters. He guards bucket getters like Jimmy Butler, right? He can post and seal you almost as good as Shaq, not as good as Shaq, if you're undersized. And that's important because if you want to guard him with, let's say, Nurkic or Jokic, who are gigantic men, well, he's going to take you on the perimeter and blow by you off the dribble, which he can do. Most of these centers could never do that, ever. Kevin Garnett wasn't blowing by you with a hezzy cross, attack, dribble, go. AD can do that. He's blindingly fast and wants to race. So it's not like he's a fast guy that doesn't really look to race. No, he's a fast guy that wants to show off how fast he is. He catches everything in traffic. And then, of course, and it's the step back 19-foot baseline jumper over Andre Iguodala that I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, how is he doing that too? Now, imagine if he could do that from 3. It's possible. He went 30 of 32 from the free throw line. 30 of 32. I think he missed 2 in one game, which means every other game combined, he never missed any, right? That we know.
And what was he from 3? Do you remember in the finals?
And again?
What was he from 3?
For the whole playoffs, 38, 40, I don't remember. It was good. Maybe 48 in the finals and had one bad game. But that's what translates, right? So if he can shoot like that from the free throw line, and he did shoot well from 3 just over a couple months, and it wasn't on a lot of shots, but it's enough, right? He had a game winner from 3. Like, what big man's ever doing that kind of stuff, right? So all those things combined, as a utility player that isn't a role player, he's a utility player. Maybe he's got lots of utilities to use, and he's an elite player. That, to me, I've never seen a big man do that. And then he went against Bam Adebayo, an all-star, who's terrific and athletic. Jokic, who's incredible as an overall player and gigantic. Nurkic, who's a very, very talented big man, it's fair to say, and was very fresh. Well, I guess they were all fresh at that point, but the Portland was very hot. And then he was also able to go against the smaller Rockets. And then I think in their closeout game, he had 43, his biggest game. So
he does all these, like, he blocked Duncan Robinson's 3, which we could look. I don't know how to look that up, to be honest. I would like to look it up, but I wonder if that happened all year. I wonder if Duncan Robinson had a 3 blocked all year. It's just, he's very comfortable out in space like that, right?
Right. And he's disciplined. Yeah. Why he's so great is different than why he ranks where he does in history. He has a high IQ for the game. He's got an amazing demeanor for the game. And so the point of the article is, we don't know what's going to look like next year. What if he doesn't shoot as good as he did in the bubble? It's a different argument, going forward. And why did he shoot so great in the bubble? Maybe it's because there are no fans in there. Maybe the arena wasn't an arena. It was just a gym. Maybe he just slept great, right? And there was no travel. I don't know. I just know that what we saw there for 2 months, in the playoffs, if we see this during the course of a season, we have to start asking ourselves, okay, has there ever been a big man over this period of time, or a period of time, 14, 15 months, that's been better at basketball than what this guy is right now? It's not instructive from the standpoint of best of all time in terms of career. He's unlikely to get that. I mean, Kareem has numbers that are unreachable. As you wrote, as you edited for me, Wilt and Kareem, like these guys are untouchable that way. But it's silly to argue that because he's not going to be better for them over the course of a career, we should ignore what he's doing during his career when he's at his peak. I think that's a silly argument to make. And he shouldn't be punished for not being the best player ever when he was in the Pelicans. Because if he goes through a 3, 4, 5-year stretch in LA where he's doing this kind of stuff every year, he's going to go down as one of the greatest players of all time. And the metrics are proving that out. Like he ranks very, very high in those kind of metrics for a season or even for a couple months. Now we'll see what happens over the course of time.
And I think you make an incredible point about David Robinson, who in many ways they were both had late growth spurts. They both played guard. They both maintained some of that sort of nimble ability to move, even when they got huge shoulders and really strong. David Robinson in box plus minus is the best big man since they started tracking that in 1973. So something about that combination is very effective. And then there's this, so being super sloppy, we're going to say, okay, so Anthony Davis is basically defends like David Robinson with more assignments, more varied assignments, but he also shoots threes, which we value as, because we don't know how to value that. But I would just add, if you don't like advanced stats, that's fine with me. But like, let's just acknowledge what happens, right? I'm not talking to you, just talking to anyone.
I know.
So the players that we talk about in the GOAT conversation are people who won games and they won in the playoffs and they won championships, right? So we're already valuing numbers, right? We're valuing outscoring the other team. What about the time they're not in the game? Like, are you crediting them with that? It's like, no. Okay. So now you're talking about that's raw plus minus, right? Like now you're already using raw plus minus. Now you just want to say, hey, did you play against Michael Jordan, LeBron James, et cetera, and beat them? Do you think people deserve a little more credit for that? Then okay, that's adjusted plus minus, right? So you don't have to believe in the stat exactly how it's tuned and everything, but in general, I think we all believe in this general concept, and you don't have to ascribe to real plus minus or box plus minus. Like, I don't care, but I think that you'd be crazy not to use some kind of plus minus in the mix of how you think about these things. And that's where I'm getting to the point of defending like AD turns out amazing. I'm sorry.
Like David Robinson.
David Robinson, both. And in addition, the general concept of how do we value adding threes? I think the answer is way more than we ever imagined. Right? Like this is the magical skill when it comes to making your team win, right? And so that's the thing he's added that's unprecedented is probably not a small effect.
Right. So two things on that. One is if I'm a Laker fan, I was a Laker fan back in the day. I don't care now. I haven't cared since Magic retired. But if you had to replay Lakers versus Celtics, those classic 80s matchups, and Larry Bird knew, I'm sure Bill Fitch and Casey Jones and Larry Bird knew that you could really impact a game by shooting threes, even if you miss 6 of 10, which is what Larry would miss in most years. I think the Celtics would win every time because the Lakers didn't have that for most of that. They didn't have that same thrust the way Bird did. And then with an more open court.
I don't know if we have to use the word thrust like that. That makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. Oh, Larry was just so much more assertive as a scorer than Magic and Michael Cooper and Byron Scott and going back a ways. To be able to give him those threes, my goodness.
Yeah.
That would be.
Honestly, I think about Reggie Miller all the time. Like, they just screwed it up. Like he should have shot way more threes. Like that whole team should have. Like it was Larry Brown's fault. Like I'm bummed. Like it would have been. He could have been Steph Curry. Right.
Right. So, but on your point on statistics, well, we always have used field goal percentage, and in the playoffs, AD made 61% of his field goals inside 3.
Yeah. So
you could argue, well, Shaq did 61% too, by the way, but he was going up against a much more crowded space. True. Okay. And finished over those gigantic guys all inside, all true. But AD made 61%. on the 19-foot step back jump shots and the floaters in traffic and the runners in the lane, because teams are way better than ever at trying to take away just your perfect rim run. So I'm not arguing Shaq isn't better dunking the ball over a 7-footer than Davis. He probably is. But the game is much more diverse than that. It's much more varied than that. So with the fact that AD can make 61% against the level of play we see now compared to even then, just because of more good players, I think it's pretty much a wash. So he's finishing just like those guys did, and he's taking equally difficult shots, a little less crowded, but he's not next to the rim all the time either.
And in doing the assessment of only twos, you're taking away the thing that makes AD's offense most valuable, right? Like totally unfair, right? Like why would you eliminate the threes from the analysis? They totally make him amazing, right? Because they're eliminating a lot of his opponents that can't even take the floor against him, right? So like it's,
That's right.
Who cares if Shaq was better against traffic, right? Like, all right, Caleb, I got to address your point.
Right.
I said in passing that Reggie Miller could have been Steph Curry, and then Caleb got upset. Here's what I mean. I mean, he could have been the guy who led a team that was in the NBA Finals on offense, where they doubled you when you cross half court and like just ruined the defense really way out there. We kind of had to wait a long time for it to really happen like that. But it was because they only, he was only going to hurt them. We should look at how many threes. I looked it up. Like, I forget the number, but Reggie Miller just didn't shoot very many threes.
So I mentioned this before, probably on our show. We've done a lot of them now. But that movie, The Green Mile, which was a short story by Stephen King, always to me symbolized the lack of the brain drain and the talent drain of Black people because of the persecution and racism that existed in America. And so in the movie, and in the book, the short story, John Coffey is just a very gifted healer, like a magical healer who was in prison and jailed and executed and all of that, and represents what I think happened in literally millions of cases in America. But it goes to a smaller point as it relates to what we're talking about here. I have no idea if Reggie Miller could have been Steph Curry. I do know there's like 500 other guys that might have been way better at shooting threes had they been allowed to, right? Reggie is one of the top candidates for sure. I mean, he's an incredibly gifted player and way taller, by the way, and just as confident, right? Just as boastful about his talent, more boastful probably. He would have been willing to do it. Like I said, so would a Bird. Like imagine Bird green lighted like Curry, right? Same as Reggie Miller. So yeah, there's so many guys that could have just been wondrous. And just
Reggie was the one who made the finals and had the coach who just hated threes and didn't want anyone shooting threes, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he also Reggie had a certain kind of nimbleness with the ball.
Oh yeah,
like I could see him getting off 30
for sure.
33.
He was That's why I said Bird. These guys are guards. So I've said this many times. Imagine asking Picasso to paint with only 1/3 of the paints that he used. Well, that's exactly what basketball was until very recently.
Yeah,
we were giving players a chance to play with far less paint than what they probably could have played with, and told them to shut up and you'll like it, right? And I think that our game now was. We don't look at James Wiseman anymore and think, well, he only should be able to dunk the ball. And that's good. Who knows what he can do one day, but there's a better chance he'll find it.
Would you take a player who can't shoot threes with the bet that you could teach them?
I mean, I would want to know lots of things. First, I want to see him shoot.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind if he had a terrible form. In fact, I'd be happier if he had bad form. There's certain forms that would be I can't really explain it so much, but I know when I see it, like, ooh, that's really broken. But if they just don't have good form and they're missing shots, that makes me happier than if they have great form and can't make it. That's problematic to me. If you already have good form and you can't make it, you just lack talent to make the shot. Like I've always said, my best shooters, if you did a wad of paper into the trash can contest, they would always win. Some guys can just throw it in. They just throw it in. And that doesn't mean guys that can't just throw it in can't learn to do it. They can, because you can cultivate that talent. But the guys that really have a broken form in a way that not so easy to fix, I'd be worrisome. And then work ethic, right? Do they have the scientist brain? Do they have the artist brain? I've talked about that before. The scientist brain is problematic because they can't get past missing. The artist isn't worried about it so much. And so I'd want to, these are things I'd look at. But in general, I do believe I've helped everyone, except there's only one player I've ever really not been able to help shoot threes at all. He wasn't an NBA player. He was a player overseas. But I had him when he was like 15, and I could never really do it. What happened?
I think it might have been me. I think I might have been the player you didn't help.
No, his name is Reno Beavis. He's my friend. He's
there you go.
40 some odd years old now. He's an incredible player. But I really failed him. I just couldn't do it. He just had a shot I couldn't fix. He was a great college player too. But 40-inch vertical. Yeah, amazing, talented kid. Little Italian guy, but could really jump and move. Just really couldn't shoot. But other than that, I've always been able to help people. How much is a different story, right? But I would be looking at things like that. Like, I do think there's value in the NBA draft process of watching these guys shoot in your gym, and they're not getting a chance to do that this year. It'll be interesting to see how much. Right. This. I don't really believe in the hits and misses the way the average person thinks. They think it's the team missing on the player. I think it's the team not knowing how to develop the player. So, but there's going to be some strangeness this year just because they can't watch them in person.
Honestly, we talked about this before, but I think it'll be better. I think that there's all this research that job interviews make you make bad decisions about who to hire. You'd be better off just looking at the track record and not interviewing at all. Because
I agree with that.
Overrate what happens in the interview. I feel like this year the NBA is going sort of without job interviews, and probably will make them focus more on the historic record of the player, right? Which is probably, well, I take it back. The whole thing is so messed up. They'll probably screw it up anyway, right? But all these weird moments. I think about that. What was the story with Joel Embiid had like 3 chocolate lava cakes with the Cavs, and then they decided not to take him? Remember what I'm talking about?
I don't know that, but I know that the Orlando Magic traded away the rights to be able to draft Amari because Ryan Humphrey outplayed him in a one-on-one workout. And you're going to ask who Ryan Humphrey is, and I'm going to say that's the point. You know who Amari was. And Ryan was like a junior or senior in Notre Dame, and Amari was a high school kid from Cypress Creek, Florida. So, those kind of things are those are silly. Or the Kings drafting Tyreek Evans because he destroyed, was it Steph Curry, Drew Holiday, Nick Calathis? Not destroyed. He outplayed Johnny Flynn, definitely Steph, definitely Nick Calathis, who was training with me that summer. Drew Holiday was training with me that summer. Tariq was the best player. And so all the Kings guys were giddy. Meanwhile, it was because he was already a grown man when he was 19.
Yeah.
Like looked like he was 25 years old. And I wanted the Kings to take Curry or even Rubio as a passer because of the way the team was built. And they didn't. They took Tariq, and I think he had his best year as a rookie pretty much. He became a much better player, but was never able to do what he did that rookie year, more or less. So, yeah, the teams are stupid.
I'm still steamed about it as a Blazer fan. The Blazers had the 3rd pick in the Chris Paul draft, and Chris Paul was available, and they traded down for one reason only, which is that Martell Webster had the best shooting drill John Nash had ever seen. And he sent me a video of the shooting drill. So great. But it was like 9 minutes. It was a sample of 9 minutes or whatever it was of Martell's life. And that's Chris Paul. Chris Paul. It's Chris Paul. Like that's Chris Paul.
What stat were we looking at where Chris Paul was like 3rd or 4th all time?
That was when you were talking about the best box plus minus since 1973.
Yeah, like that's what it was.
Jordan,
box plus minus.
LeBron, Chris Paul, Magic, and David Robinson, as I recall, something like that.
Yeah, Chris Martell. I've coached Martell Webster. He wasn't on that list.
I mean, great guy.
I love Martell. Yeah,
nothing wrong with having Martell Webster, but you don't have to trade away Chris Paul to get Martell Webster. You just don't have to do that. Like,
who'd they get also? They traded down. They got someone else. No one good.
There's a chance that I will come up with this name during the course of this show. Not a good one, but there's a chance. But yeah, no, nothing worked out.
This is why teams are afraid to trade down. And I happen to really like the idea of trading down all the time. Trade down, collect more picks and more players.
Yeah.
But you're afraid to pass up on Chris Paul.
I just like the idea of competence. Is that so wrong? like, like
By
at
the
the
office,
time,
or the player?
the by the Blazers. I mean,
Yes,
like
that's a swing
in
and a
real
miss
time,
in baseball parlance.
like
That's a swing and a miss. To,
the swing and a miss. And again, I this thing that I'm just saying about job interviews misleading people, like I had read that in I think a Malcolm Gladwell book before all this happened, right? And then at the moment the Blazers are doing this, I'm like, whoa, you can go find it. Like I'm just some dorky blogger, and I'm like, oh, this is a giant mistake because Chris Paul has a body of work that no one can match, right? And I could see an argument for some of these other players in that draft, but top three is where you want to be in this draft, right? And then the Blazers nicely, spent some time and sent me the video and like, oh, but you don't know about this secret workout. I'm like, I don't care about that secret workout because it's one workout. I just feel like that's where like this why can't they know that? Why don't they know that?
The Kings did that. They drafted my kid Kevin Martin, 26, because he broke their shooting record for workouts, and he also was number 2 scorer in college. But he went to Western Carolina, and he was number 26 pick, right? And then a couple years later, they drafted Quincy Doobie from Rutgers because he broke Kevin's shooting workout, whatever it was. But Quincy Doobie was a 6'2", 6'3" combo guard, long-armed, not a 6'7", super athletic freak who could really shoot also. And I just, when I heard them say that, I thought, well, Kevin's already on the team, right? Then they drafted Francisco Garcia, a shooting guard from Louisville, who I liked very much. I thought he was a nice role player. And now you're taking another player, a similar position, because he broke the workout, but he's little. Like he's not a point guard. He's not getting people better. Quincy, I don't think he lasts 3 years, and then he went overseas and he's probably retired now. As I always say, as supposedly one of the godfathers of player development, players should play more as opposed to doing skill development more. I don't overinflate the value that I bring to a player's skills in a drill. The point of player development is to help them win more games, which goes to the context that we're discussing here. So LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, is that right? Did I say his name right? That's the actor from Top Gun. But I just went blank on his name. I did a story on him too. Yep. The kid that from Georgia. And then Weissman, of course, are the top 3 guys. All I care about is who's going to help you win more games.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you do that? Right. How does that happen? There are big people now saying you can't draft a center. And that's one reason why I wrote the AD article. We didn't include it, but yeah, you can. If you think he might be able to do lots of things that AD is doing. Right. Because that dude helps win a lot of games. So that is where I think, we got a dog sighting. That's where I think all you should think about as an executive is can this guy help us win games? How many games compared to the other guys? What does it look like? How do we make that happen? That's the context we should be looking at, right? Not just how they shot the ball great, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, people don't think much about the situation, right? And I think that's where it takes some confidence and some command of the game to like divorce yourself from the idea, like, wow, this guy just waxed this shooting drill. That'll be good for our team because shooting helps in basketball, right? Whereas like, I think you're thinking more like when and where and against whom while guarding whom, like we're going to put this player, right? And so you can see Kevin Martin and project one set of situations where he can do these things, and Quincy Doobie, and it's just, there aren't as many situations that you can create for him as a team where he can contribute like Kevin Martin did.
Well, especially when you already had 2 6'6" and 6'7" 2 guards on the team playing a lot, starting and coming off the bench, because that's a big factor too, is you've got to think about when you're getting these guys in the game. Like AD went to a broken franchise twice. Right. And so everything he could do was needed. Different with Kawhi. Kawhi went to a franchise, I'm not going to say thrusting, a franchise rolling, right? I'm just kidding. And he wasn't ready yet to dominate, Kawhi.
Yeah.
He needed time to bake in a sense, right? And so I thought he was just put in a perfect situation to allow his game to develop, because I've been arguing for years. Kawhi Leonard goes to the 2018 Knicks. He's Kevin Knox.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't shoot coming out of college. He didn't really have a
Yeah.
game. He was a basketball player, but the Knicks didn't know how to use that. And I think Kawhi would have been, yeah. Kevin Knox is a very competitive dude, very
Yeah.
talented player, and might be out of the league in a year
Yeah.
because of where he is. Maybe it'll be fixed now with new management. I'm hoping, right? He's got a lot of talent. I'm hoping, but I don't know.
I was thinking a little bit, if it's not hard at all to believe that Anthony Davis will now commence to wow everyone as an all-time great, and it will really not look good for the Pelicans if that's what happens, right? Like, I mean, they had him. You know what I mean? They had him when he was 24 years old and didn't turn him into this.
This is why we have a draft. This is why we have the lottery. We're trying to reward bad franchises. This only proves the point you and I have been saying for years now.
Yeah.
It's rewarding them with a false god in a sense, right? Fake. It's fake because the bad franchise can't figure it out. Now, the Pelicans are in good hands now. It was poorly run. They were poorly run, and the evidence is overwhelming. And now they have Brandon Ingram, but he ain't no AD.
Yeah. 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 That whole trade looks different now, right? Like, good job, Lakers.
Yeah. Yeah. The Lakers, this is why I said many times now, the Pelicans could have had Zubac too.
Yeah.
The Lakers were trading everybody. They could have had Kuzma, Zubac, name it.
Yeah.
I don't think LeBron cared. I don't think he cared. And maybe he shouldn't have.
Yeah. And this is a luxury a little bit. This is a little bit, you were flirting with some trades. The Rockets could get all of the equivalent players from the Clippers for James Harden, right?
Yeah. They should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that I don't know what year it was that Kawhi was traded to Toronto, but I was doing my show with Tom Haberstroh.
Yeah.
Nerdy She Wrote. And I just kind of flippantly talked about the team that makes the most sense to do the Kawhi deal is Toronto. And I walked it through, whatever. And then when it happened, I think I may have told the story. Tom called me immediately and said, did Masai tell you they were trading for Kawhi? I'm like, no, of course not. I was just guessing.
Yeah.
So I'm just guessing here. But I thought about this yesterday. I still think Rockets Clippers make sense.
I agree.
Yeah. I think the Clippers, if you're going to arm up again, now the Clippers can just say, let's run it back. We got a new coach, right? We're gelling as a team. We're not going to have a pandemic again. We can beat the Lakers. And they're absolutely right. They don't do a single thing other than re-sign Montrezl Harrell and those kind of guys, and they could beat the Lakers. But if they don't want to do that, Harden to me makes the most sense.
I suspect that they want to load up, right?
Yeah.
Like, because they have, like, they have 30% chance of winning the West, right? That's not good enough for we mortgaged our whole future for what's now 1 year, right? It's just not good enough. Like, this team's never been to the conference finals, and like they're even money to even make it there. I mean, it's tough. It's tough out there. I feel like they're gonna
swing for the
Steve Ballmer is willing to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he's gonna want maximum results. And I just feel like run it back doesn't feel like the move. It feels like they're gonna do some aggressive billionaire inspired thing. And what better than bringing in James Harden? Like, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I would like them to get it big, but I could see them wanting James, and then they all kind of share the offense a little bit. Plus, winning the West isn't winning a championship. Like, if you didn't pay attention to this finals, then you don't realize Miami had a 25% chance of winning that series.
Yeah.
Maybe 30% with Dragic healthy. That's better odds than what Trump had to win in 2016. Right. That's a 250 hitter in baseball is getting hit every 4 times at the plate. It's not you're in the major league. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so the East is gonna be better next year. The top teams, I don't know about Toronto. Boston will be better for sure. Miami will be better, you would think for sure. And Milwaukee, Giannis isn't getting worse. So just winning the West isn't even enough. Like you've got to beat that other side too. So
Oh yeah.
that's why I think the Clippers have. I agree with you. I think that I don't think they're just going to run it back. I want them to run it back, but I don't think they will.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might try to do a different kind of deal too and just get a big guy. Zubac is very good. He I think he averaged 30 minutes in their last series. So it's not like he's it's not like he's a spot player. But if they want to upgrade, they can include him and a few others. And I don't know who they get. I have to look at it. But if they want to try to upgrade at 4 or 5, and it makes some sense with Jokic and with Davis in that league, right? And because I want to talk more about Weissman, but I want to study him more and write an article maybe, and then we'll talk about Weissman and the Warriors because I see something really interesting happening there potentially. But let me study more first.
Okay, I like it. All right, so the Pacers hired a new coach. Judy, maybe you could share that tweet. And thank you, Judy, for Googling how to say his name. We think it's Bjorkgren, Nate Bjorkgren. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here's the facts. Here are the facts. He was an unpaid volunteer when he started working for Nick Nurse with the Iowa Energy of the D League back in 2007. He made $500 in year 2, $2,500 in year 3. He worked as a part-time gym teacher to pay the bills. Now he's an NBA head coach. Very cool. That's a movie, right? We could see that. That's exciting. But then our friend PD Webb points out that why does he have to make such terrible money in the G League? And doesn't that make it so that the pipeline's only open to people who are privileged enough to have those years without income? You know a lot of people in these shoes, David. What's your take?
Well, yeah, so this is the global story. The global story is my profession is mostly a very, very low paying profession. And only the top guys can really make it. I chose to leave that world when I was offered a college coaching job, my wife and I, in a nice place in a big league. And I just was afraid of that race where I'd bump my head and not get to the very top floor, not get past the low ceiling for whatever reason. I didn't play in college or the NBA would be one of them, two of them. And I didn't want my world as a moderately paid at best assistant coach who depends on 18-year-olds not getting arrested or doing drugs or getting in trouble somehow and suddenly have to leave, and now my team stinks, the head coach gets fired, and now I'm unemployed. I didn't like that lack of control. But when I was getting to that position, I was a high school coach, making in the 20s. I don't know if I ever made even $30,000 a year when I was a high school. I only did it for 4 years, but I don't think I ever made 30. And that's all my summer traveling and working camps and everything as a teacher and a coach. My assistant for 15 years, whatever, Ryan Pannone, who's now he's been on the show. He's the head coach of the G League of the Bayhawks for the Pelicans, who are moving to New Orleans, which is cool. That's his story. This is his story. He volunteered a ton. He would never, ever not take a job because of salary reasons. His wife made money, so that helped. And I think the point that PD is making on the tweet is where he says, actually, you want to read that tweet? Henry, you didn't read it. Do you want to read what PD wrote?
I can. There we go.
Gerard would like this too.
I'm going to do it in all caps voice. Oh, yeah. Gerard, please join us if you'd like. All caps voice. This is not an encouraging or uplifting story. A man was leveraged out of wages for his excellent labor because NBA owners collude to keep G League wages down. The format of deprivation removes hundreds of great coaches from the pipeline, leaving only a few, the most connected and the privileged.
So, right. So this upsets me more just because the NBA this year excluded to some degree is making plenty of money, right? The fact that Ryan, who initially got a job at the Bayhawks maybe 4 or 5 years ago and made nothing, that bothers me. That fact that he made nothing. When he was volunteering or barely being paid at jobs overseas, that's a different story. Those teams weren't making a lot of money either. So yeah, to me, the NBA, if they were smart, would recognize that there's lots of Ryan Panones. And I made this, let's just get out in the open now. I'm anxious to see the day where there's more young black coaches who didn't play in college or the NBA. They exist. Let's hire them too. The G League should be thinking about it's a farm system for brains, not just ballers, right? Let's find young, ambitious, hardworking people who have the kind of brains we want to cultivate, and let's fill the G League with them and see what bubbles up. You'll find more Nick Nurses for sure. Right. This guy was a G League guy, obviously. There's plenty more. So it's unfortunate that we have to do that. But, in society, we have a lot of that where we get away with underpaying people who really have a ton of talent. It's no different. We're talking about Henry with 3-point shooting, in a sense, and John Coffey. If you paid them better and gave them more responsibility, who knows what you might find. But you're automatically limiting them. The fact that he had to get a second job, this guy did, and many others do, tells you how much they can only give you. They have to save something for the rest of their day, right? And so it's a failure of deep thinking and long-term thinking. It'd be like you telling me I could only write about rookies, which for ESPN for a long time. And I understood why they were doing it. We were loaded with talent. And I'm not so sure there was an appetite for a lot of stuff that I was writing beyond it. But I think I was capable of more. But I just was put in a role and I did my best in that. And it was fine. It was a nice part-time job. But I think it's more fun to write about Anthony Davis in his prime, that he might be the best player that we've seen as a big man, that you allowed me to do that I couldn't do at ESPN, right? So those in charge need to be thinking big picture that way. That's how I say it. I'm sure Gerard and his capitalist machine agenda, this is right up your alley, buddy.
Yeah, let's hear it, Gerard.
Well, look, I mean, my point is that there is no reason why these low-level jobs, entry level into anything, any industry, whether it be coaching, NBA league front offices, whatever, shouldn't be low paid or unpaid internships, right? Because when they are, the majority of people who can take them are people who either A, have some kind of financial security from some other avenue, or B, they have the opportunity where they're willing to take that risk on, as the Toronto coach did, and only get paid $500 a year. That's not tenable for the majority of people, right? Like, Coach, you just said, Ryan Panone's wife made money. Yeah, if she didn't, he probably couldn't do that, right?
100% right.
And the people who get impacted, by and large, right, are Black, brown, minorities, right? Because they don't have safety nets that exist like that to take on these unpaid internships, which are horrendous. And that's in any industry. I mean, Henry, that happens in our business, right?
Oh yeah.
Which is wait, what? You mean I have to work and do all these and I'm not getting paid? Yeah, and it's all about, but look what you're getting, access to this and that. And yeah, those things are good, but I also have to keep this roof over my head and pay for things, right? So there needs to be some kind of mix there. So that's always my issue with the framing of these, feel good, oh, you bust your ass and okay, but that's not really how it goes in a world dominated by the number one selling band of all time, the capitalist machine.
There we go. Ding, ding, ding. And it's okay. It happens in a lot of subtle ways too. So let's say Ryan Panone's the greatest innovator in the history of the game. Let's say he's going to be triple Nick Nurse in the years to come. It's possible, right? But let's say he married differently, right? So now there's going to be some 2040 NBA finals that's just crappier because it won't have all of his incredible ideas in it, right? And I there's a fun little game you can play, which is people who are successful in Hollywood, just look at how many of them have other sources of money. It's sort of ridiculous. It is really the one that kind of struck me was, I don't know if you've heard this Nick Kroll story, but Nick Kroll is from this family of this private eye agency called Kroll, which has crazy connections and did all sorts of weird stuff for the government and grew up super wealthy. If you grew up with just a regular, whatever, school teacher parents, he's not this famous comedian, right? We might have a better one, right? We might have somebody who put in all these hours. So I feel like we're all a little bit, this is not a meritocracy, right? This is the best of people who can afford to get there, right? So anyway, Randy doesn't like Nick Kroll. That show Big Mouth is pretty funny. but But I feel like, yeah, and it's actually now I'll do a little bit of mea culpa. We started the Troop Network. I went to all these meetings about like, the long tail, right? Like mainstream media was publishing a limited set of voices, and out there in the long tail were these other voices who were going to matter. And so we made a project to feature them, right? And so we're like, who's got the good work? And Kevin Arnovitz put in a ton of time. We found like people who are doing really good work outside of the mainstream. And then we recruited them. And then after a while, it was like, oh my God, these are all white dudes. Like we had absolutely not that agenda, right? But you get there and you're like, same thing like the G League coaching model, right? It's like, who do you get who can survive, 4 years of doing stellar, brilliant work without really income, so that Kevin Arnovitz can find you and say, great job, right? Like it's not people with 2 jobs, right? It's people with 1 job or less, right? And anyway, there you go. I talked a lot. Who wants
before we
to
go, before we take another step forward, I want to make an observation. So Gerard, don't get mad at me for this. It's a compliment anyway, but you look very fit. Are you on a routine?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I run and like do a little bit of like, body workout stuff, and I generally don't eat. Judy, let's object to run.
I mean, I've been looking at your handsome face for many, many months now, 3 to 5 times a week. And it's possible that I was wrong, but you look, I should say, more fit than I've ever seen you on these Zoom calls.
Thank you, Coach. And I don't, and I've gone mostly plant-based over the past year and a half. So, I mean, yeah.
A lot of people are really struggling, and I bring this up for a reason. And we're about to get locked down again. It's Europe is. I just saw a chart today. Europe is through the roof, like straight line up with their infection rate, and we started way above them, and we're 2 weeks lagging, and it's going to get really crazy. And there's lots of worried people. And what are we going to do? And I know you guys live up north where it's cold. It's super important now more than ever to make sure you're feeding your body what you need to, especially if you can't get out and exercise a lot based on where you live, because we're going to have dark times. Hopefully we'll have something to celebrate in November, but that's not going to solve any problem immediately with raging infection rates and everything else. So whatever it is you were doing, you said plant-based, we all need to hear that.
Oh, thank you, Coach. And it's also this time of year too that I'm worried about, right? Like this actually, my birthday's in late November, right before Thanksgiving, and then we have Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, all that. Like those 6 weeks are my favorite times of the year, and they're probably not going to be as fun this year, just because we're not doing they're not going to be big family gatherings and all that indoor stuff, and at least I'm not doing that. No. But other people will be, and that's unfortunately going to prolong our lockdown.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but you can't invite people over that you don't trust totally are being safe if you've got parents coming. Like I can't invite friends of mine because of that. So, all right, go ahead, Henry. I know.
Wait, what are you doing with your kids?
My son's not allowed to come home because of basketball. He's not. My daughter will be fine. Yeah. Yes, but I'm speaking of kids in general for sure. Like 20 somethings are dangerous.
So I don't think like what David changing the topic to Gerard's current look and fitness is not quite as invasive as this doctor I used to go to, but this doctor would he would like with your permission, he would just grab like your flank with his hand and just feel like basically how flabby you were right there. And he was like, this is better than any other, like he would just grab him. I was like, every time he did it, I was like, whoa, like you are crossing the line. Anyway, yeah. David didn't grab
Jess,
you, so that's good.
Did you say I'd rather go on a date first at least?
Yeah, seriously. Seriously.
I didn't know also, Gerard, if you were swimming.
No, because it had to be indoor pools, and an indoor pool is a petri dish. So no.
I didn't. Yeah.
No. If I lived in Florida or on the West Coast, that'd be outdoor pools all day fine. But
oh, you would be.
Not
you
here.
would be.
You would.
And houses are selling here. I've one friend who just sold her house. She put on the market, and in one day, 15 offers, 6 got no bidding war, sold. And it's maybe $600,000 house. Not in Florida, that's a nice house. In New York, not so much, but in Florida, it's a nice house on the water, on a canal, and that's how it is all over the place now because all of you New Yorkers are moving to Florida, huh?
Yeah. This because New Yorkers are moving there?
We think it's New Yorkers, but definitely Northerners for sure. But that's what we're hearing. I'm not selling my house, but yeah, people they're moving
I mean,
fast.
Well,
think
it's
about it.
thing happening here, Henry, like in Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island, whatever. I mean, these bidding wars are crazy. People are bidding on houses sight unseen and like getting into because they're like just fleeing the city. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Wow.
It's nuts. Hey, Gerard, have you seen James Weissman play?
I saw a little bit of like a half a game, like, and so not much. I mean, he's physically like an incredible specimen, but I got to look at high school tape or AAU tape.
Right.
There's no college tape. It's like
He played one game against South Carolina State, which is fine. They're not high school kids, but they're not Duke, right, or Kentucky. So I'm gonna do a deep dive. He's to me he's the most intriguing, and I'm sure we'll talk draft. The draft is less than a month away now.
Well, I'm interested in that, Coach, because I wonder if you're the Warriors, right? Like, let's say because the big man and a big man like him is someone who they could definitely use pair next to Draymond. Do you think, like, are you like, all right, I trust that given age and whatever, I'm still gonna bet that Steph and Clay and Draymond with potentially unlocking Andrew Wiggins and James Wiseman is good enough? Or am I like, or if I'm Bob Myers, am I like, I don't know. Let me move that 2 pick and Andrew Wiggins for an established already, all-star, superstar level guy. That way I have a quote unquote guarantee, even though there's no such thing as that.
So Henry's going to have to give me permission to write this, but I'll give you a preview now. Should Miami 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, been in position like the Warriors, should they not have taken Bam Adebayo? I would argue, yeah, they should take Bam Adebayo. If I knew Steph Curry, and I'd say, okay, you're going to get a sick rim running athlete who in 2 seasons might be starting his all-star season as you're 34, do you like that? I would think he's going to say, yeah, I really like that. So again, I'm going to do some more research, but based on what I've seen so far, I don't know how the Warriors trade down. I don't know how they trade down and not take this kid. I know why Minnesota doesn't take him.
Yeah.
Because they have Cat. I'm not saying they shouldn't, because I have no idea this guy can play the forward, and then it'd be amazing. But the issue would be, do the Warriors think the Wolves are going to trade down to someone that's going to take Weissman 1? And there's the intrigue. Because to me, if you look at the Warriors roster, it's very obvious they have to find an athletic 5. I love Kevon Looney and think he's the single most underrated player in the league.
But he's not.
Right? We wrote on TrueHoop, he can guard Kawhi and did well. Mm-hmm. He is a very gifted player that doesn't need limelight, and they're paying him as such, $5 million a year. But let Weissman back him up and then let Looney come off the bench. Come on. I don't see how you can't do that. I think it's easy. Like, I think the Warriors, I think you're going to start seeing lots of rumors of Golden State trading down and Golden State looking at guards and wings. And I think it's all a lie. Like, I don't know how they don't take James Weissman based on what I've seen in one game. And I know his story, but let me research it and then I'll definitively say that. But that's my inclination.
That sounds good.
What about you, Henry? Your Warriors GM.
Well, this is the question of like, are you the Clippers all in for a year or two, right? Or are you trying to build a longer term thing? And I would certainly always want to build the long term thing, right? But I am a little bit, if I were the Warriors, I'd be a little worried that they're not elite. Like, it might be that, Steph coming off an injury at 32 and Draymond
Clay ACL, Clay ACL,
like, yeah, like it might be that this is the NBA's, 5th, 6th, 7th best team this year.
Yeah.
In which case, I would hate to triple down on that roster, right? In which case, it's even more reason to take Weissman, right? Because like maybe maybe he's the player you build around when you're good again. And honestly, maybe we can't even think this way, but in the ruthless transactional thinking of a GM, like maybe you trade some of your really important players, right? Like, if you're not winning this year, then you have to really think about it.
I think it makes sense to give that backcourt and Draymond a chance. Well, I don't know how long. There's no reason to put a time limit on the length because we don't know how they're going to look next year, as Henry just said. But I don't see any argument not to take Weissman. You as Henry just made, like you can argue long term. You should, by the way, you should think about middle to long term. But even the short term, the cost of getting someone may not help you get that much better anyway, because there's a tax in a sense because you're losing someone to add something that can help you win right away. But again, I go back to the same thing about putting balls. I want to give Steph 3, 4, 5 more years, 6 years even. And Steph has the kind of game where let's just wave a magic wand, okay? And Weissman is close to AD, not as good. Let's say Weissman's Bam, okay? Steph can help that team. Yeah. Steph Curry's brains and ball handling and passing and shooting can help that team for sure. Yeah. And so can Clay's sharpshooting, like Mike Miller when he was 48, 100 years old, like for the Heat, right? Yeah. That could be Clay, who'd be just fine in that role. So, I think that, again, I'll watch it, and I'm going to speak to the Memphis coach and find out more about insight. But I've heard, like, really great things about the kid as a person. Like, really great things about him.
I know. You know who agrees with you is just reading between the tea leaves of his podcast, but CJ McCollum. CJ McCollum was like, what are you doing, NCAA? Like, you want this guy playing. Like, he was really chapped when, as I guess everybody was, right? When
that's cool. I didn't know that. Hey, before we leave, so CJ interviewed Kamala?
I didn't see it, but they did a thing yesterday, right?
CJ and maybe a few others, or just CJ?
Yeah.
Like, what was that?
A few others too.
How did that happen, Gerard? What was that?
I don't know. I have not seen it yet. I assume, though, it's just what I would assume is that it's the NBPA and the players using their clout to get right, which they can, right? That's one of the advantages of being a multimillionaire famous person is that you can make these things happen and you can do things for good. I'm very curious because I think there's other athletes there as well. I'm very curious.
Yeah, I thought Donovan was there, Mitchell, and maybe a third one.
It's part of some homework on this.
Part of the NBPA's push, because they said, like, when we come back, we want to make sure the players feel like they have a voice in there talking about issues that matter. So I'll dig a little bit and find out who set this up and how that all came to be.
I love it, though. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to add? Did we do our damage here? Oh, actually, I take it back. Randy had a question way early that we didn't get to in the moment, but he was wondering, David, for you, how many people fit the bill? Here I'm talking about big men who move like guards, basically. I mentioned that in passing when Randy asked that.
So there's a growing number, like Joakim Noah could do it. Tyrese Thomas was only 6'9" or 6'10". He could do it. Al Horford moves well, not quite as good as Joakim in his prime. The special part, though, is the other side of the court. So one of the cool things, Randy, is AD was a point guard as a freshman. So is Joakim, right? And I think there's a few others, too. If David Robinson grew in college, he was 6'7" when he got to Navy, maybe even shorter than that. And no one had to be a 7-foot tall guy. That's why Navy's never been close to being any good since, right? There's an advantage to that sometimes. You develop, I think, a coordination and a comfort out in space when you're a guard. You're used to guarding in space. In a way, back then, big men were only used to guarding inside. And so I think it's a mental thing more than a physical thing. It's why I always take my big men when they're here in the summer. We do all guard stuff. I make them get comfortable handling the ball in space, like playing with the ball like they're CP3 or Kyrie. And I do it not just for improving their hands, which works too, but also just get them more comfortable guarding in space. If you do it offensively, you have a better chance to guard it defensively. But there's a growing number. More and more guys are doing it now. I have a 6'9" kid on my son's former high school team. It's a post-grad team now. Super athletic, 6'9", really wide, 7'2". He's not a great player yet, but he's very, very, very gifted as an athlete with that kind of size, like a shifty guard in a sense. We're seeing more of those guys playing like that and not just being inside guys more than ever before. It's the evolution of the game.
Coach, I saw some mock draft board or something. The Israeli kid you mentioned that and he was really high on this mock draft board. And you know me, I love tall dudes. So the only thing is he can't shoot. So
he can't shoot, but I guess in their drill stuff, he's looked much, much better. Okay. But he's a winner. Yeah, I thought all along he's a top 5 player. I've seen him down at 10 or 11. He's a top 5 guy. Come on, he scored double figures a lot of games in the EuroLeague. Have we learned our lesson from Luka? Come on. Like when you can play at that level for one of the best teams in the world that's not in the NBA, and you're a teenager, and he's won hugely internationally, like world championships and European championships for Israel, a country the size of Rhode Island. That should tell you something about this kid's talent.
All right, you guys. Thank you, David. Thank you, Gerard.
Be safe. Save him Friday.
Take care, Judy.